Okay, so good morning, and now we start with the theme of this meeting of the EUnet4DBP, which is the process, the digital building permit process, and the first speaker is Judith Faut. Judith, please, can you introduce yourself and then make your presentation? Judith, you are muted, I think. We cannot hear you. No, sorry. Maybe Antero can go before you. Maybe you can try to to change anything in your setting. Okay, thank you, Judith. So Antero Hirvensalo, please can you do your presentation first? Sorry for the technical issue. So please, can you introduce yourself and then make your presentation about Finnish BIM permit process?
Sure, thank you. I'm just trying to find a place for sharing my screen, so
it should appear at the bottom of your screen on the right.
Yeah. Sorry, this is my first or second time in this environment, so it took just a second, but
okay, here you are. Perfect.
I hope that you can see my screen.
Yes. Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
So it's a privilege being here in this event, and I'm happy to tell some lessons learned from Finnish so-called BIM permit clinic. That was a longer period of time, and that was based on a participative approach of developing BIM-based permit processes. And but first, who am I? My name is Antero Hirvensalo, and my background is in research at Tampere University in Finland, where I work at the unit of sustainability transformation of urban environments under this theme. And there we have a multidisciplinary team of researchers coming from sociology and business and politics and so on. So we have this kind of umbrella research unit focusing on the sustainability transformation. On the other side, I work as a consultant and a process developer in Synecon, which is my company, and telling about this clinic that was done as a consultant assignment, and not so much research, but since I'm trying to combine these two worlds, I can't do nothing of being a bit theoretical too when reporting the results. So the approach of this clinic, some words about that, and what does BIM-based construction processes mean, and what is their development. So we have a very broad task in thinking of developing these sectors, operational processes in the AECO sector, and we can think of first the software and information systems side, and that is describing the data use cases and having the accuracy required for the development of information systems and software and their use. Then there's the BIM regulation and developing the regulation laws and the standardization of different kind of semantics and the data content is another viewpoint that belongs to this picture. And as we heard before, there are attempts to tackle these issues Europe-wide and so on. So these things are familiar to you. And then speaking about developing operational processes means most of all the tasks and roles and responsibilities of different companies and administrators and workers. And they include not only the work processes, but also business and the customer needs perspectives that have to be the starting point for everything, as I think that Nick will be talking about later on. And there are many parallel projects currently going on, also in Finland, in developing these other issues too. But this clinic had the focus on developing these kind of permit processes looked from a broader perspective. And although we were taking in the information and collaboration from the other projects like the ICT side and the BIM regulations side, but the focus was more on the development of processes. And here's what we actually did. So there were 9 pilot projects, and they were about mostly of residential buildings. There were some other office buildings, but mostly residential buildings.
And Tero?
Yeah.
We're not seeing the slides change.
Okay. Let me check what has gone wrong then.
We're still on the second slide. That's better.
Yeah, and we also see your screen, I mean the PowerPoint screen, not the presentation.
So let's have it once again. When I switch the mode to the presentation first, but then I can't see your platform. But let's do it once again. So do you see the presentation mode? No.
No, it's not presentation mode.
Okay. Well, then let's not try that one. So
yeah, fine.
You can possibly see it now better, yeah. So what we did there was we had 9 pilot projects, and 6 Finnish cities were involved then in them. And those projects were real starting construction projects that needed the building permit. So we gathered their clients, which were like big construction companies and city units, and then we had the designers, those projects and those responsible authorities in the cities in question. Then we had a bunch of consultants there, software consultants like Gravicon, which is a BIM consultant, Solibri, you know. Then us process consultants like my company, another process consultant company, and the clinic was coordinated by RACLI, which stands an association of property owners and real estate investors in Finland, and that was responsible for the holding all the pieces together in this case. And also we had the funding party here, which was the Ministry of Environment in Finland. So the clinic was done in teams since it was started last June, and this was something that was a little bit scary at the beginning. How did it all go? Since we had a bunch of 100 participants during the clinic, and this kind of a joint venture hadn't been done so at so large scale before. And then the work was based on first of all participatory co-development workshops, and they were organized so that we had some presentations there, but mostly we focused on having the participants' voices heard, and have given their time to present themselves and present their projects, and then present their problems and expectations related to the BIM processes. And we started the workshops by modeling one example process that was an advanced project, one of the most advanced projects at that time in Finland, in Järvenpää. And we done with process modeling, we tried to describe an overall great picture of the permit process, and also the issues related to the necessary developments found in the process. So then we had also specific software workshops which intended to giving knowledge and know-how of how to use the software during the permit process. And they were organization specific, and the consultants just virtually sit next to the workers and help them to do certain things with ArchiCAD and Revit and Solibri and so on. And at the end of the clinic, there was a series of experience workshops that were aimed for sharing knowledge about the findings and the process, and to scaling the process overall for Finland further on. And this is a list of the participatory way of working that I told mostly of you, mostly what was done there. But one thing I would like to mention is this specific meetings for setting the targets for BIM usage, which was found very useful for each and every project that were in different stages of using BIM, that they collaboratively talked about what is possible for them to do in this and that project in the sense of the maturity and the skills of the participants. So this was found very useful, and also for future projects that would work as a very good idea for deciding the targets for using BIM. And what was done in the pilots was rehearsing the submitting process first to the digital customer services. Then the second thing was to rehearse checking the IFC application with Solibri. And the third stage was the rehearsal of the review process with using the model in different stages. And in the piloting mode and in the participatory development approach, it was very central that we also gave possibilities for the participants to speak about their motivations, why they would be willing to develop further BIM processes, and openness, creating that kind of a culture where it was possible enough to share information between the individual companies and those cities and so on. And the motivation side was found to be very crucial, and we discussed much of the expected benefits of the future BIM process and automation and other benefits that belong to this category. And also the downsides is that people were very concerned about having time for this kind of issues, developing issues, and also from the private side, from the company side, those business questions that what is the benefit in the future that when we get those automated processes and other qualitative changes. So what are the business benefits stemming out from that, and finding the motivations from the participants, that part was very crucial. So this picture is gives an idea, hopefully, to you that what is the process approach that we used in this clinic. And this was the early advanced BIM-based process that was modeled before, and this was presented to the participant, and through this image it was hopefully possible to convey the ideas that we hope to develop during this clinic, and what was actually the current level of development, and what was the best practice found in Finland during that time. And in this picture you can see the main tasks of the permit process, but what we wanted to include in the picture was kind of the multiple network of actors and their processes. So we modeled the client's process. Sorry about the Finnish terms, if you can see them here, but it starts from the spatial list of spaces. So what is the term in English? That is the client's first design of the upcoming project, and so on, and then the budget and then approval processes on the client side. But the point here is that the clients in Finland now these days, they rely heavily on BIM also in their processes. So these interlinkages between the information between the participants here on the left side, they were in the focus of our discussion. The second row there describes the designer's process from the conceptual design and then drafting and then realizing. And the third row means the coordinator, that is the BIM coordinator's activities during the project. The authorities process was described in earlier. It was described earlier quite in detail, but it concerns mostly the digital customer process, how the model is delivered to the authorities, and what are the next steps in having certain presentations and reviews during this process. And the last row there is urban planning and their role in input from the urban design, and then we had also political actors in cities, those boards that are involved in the review processes when they're big enough projects, so they should be giving their acceptance to these projects too. So all in this networked process, BIM has a very significant role in managing all the information that moves through the project. And these interlinkages is something that we were interested in. A couple of lessons I wanted to report to you last is firstly what Ilona was telling earlier, that we are at early stages in Finland too, and what we mostly did in the pilots was submitting the IFC to the portal and then experimenting the model checking, and then mostly initial data was delivered to the portal, like those key information of building area and volume and location data and the administrative informations. And also we found that the BIM maturity is still low in cities and municipalities, and then training is needed, and it is already available, but we made some suggestions that how to develop the training further, just tailored for the needs for the administrators and municipalities. Another thing is that there was a hybrid model of this review process, and it means that we were making the review process mostly by using drawings, PDFs, but then simultaneously we rehearsed the usage of IFCs, and then the reason for this was that the actual projects didn't allow investing so much time for really trying to push through the IFC models through the whole review process, but they had to be done quickly enough. So there was lots of rehearsal, but also the process was done traditionally at the same time. And there were some city model integrations and reviews based on the integrations too. And since we had these software consultants working together with the process development, there were some really difficult issues in the process that were found to focuses of further development. So we established collaboration with Archicad and Solibri and Revit to deliver the needs to them and getting further with those bottlenecks. Well, yes, the national BIM guidelines as well in Finland, they didn't yet answer the questions of standardization of the requirements and so on. So what we found mostly was that piloting was a very effective way for promoting this kind of bottom-up development of the requirements, what the administrators and the municipality workers really need from the IFC models. And this is something that, from my opinion, requires more interaction between the regulators and the requirement developers and the actual users of those requirements in the projects. And piloting was something that responded to this challenge. And sorry about my dog barking there. I think my time is coming up, but to conclude, the clinic has a follow-up, and we have a bunch of projects focused on process development on the ICT level mostly, but on this business process level also, having 100 more municipalities participating. And also, as I told, that we found the need for more and more focused training. There were several polytechnics that took this initiative and are developing their courses. And then we have a so-called building permit community, which continues as an open innovation forum for discussions and continuing this kind of open information sharing in the future. And we have a first meeting coming in 2 weeks, so let's see how that goes on and emerges from this community that we had. Thank you for listening, and if you have some questions related to this clinic, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Antero. Very interesting project and very applied, which is also a great challenge to tackle. Any questions for Antero? Maybe if you have any question, you can also text it in the chat. And in the meantime, we try again with connecting with Judith. So I make you presenter, Judith.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Does it work?
Now we can hear
perfect.
you.
Great.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So thank you, Antero, for your presentation. And please, Judith, introduce yourself. Start with your own.
So let me check how I can share my screen. It's probably here. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So sorry for the technical issues. So my name is EUnet4DBP. I am a researcher from Germany, and I'm investigating building permitting since 2016 when I started my PhD study at Bauhaus University in Weimar. And I can probably say that I really focus on the process. So I'm really enjoy showing some of my research on the building permit process. So I would like to show you some exemplary findings. And so I collected some of my studies I did, and I would like to show you from each of them to get you some insights. So I will start with my PhD study, which I did at Bauhaus University in Weimar in Germany, and I finished, I defended last year. And then I would like to show you some research as a part of the GeoBIM project, as I did at Fraunhofer Italia last year. I would also introduce you to some comparative study between Germany and the US, what I did with the USC, the University of Southern California. And I also would like to show you what I'm doing right now at IB Software in the research project IECO. And I also would like to promote our research paper for the process again at the end. So let's start with my PhD dissertation. The title is a process-oriented decision model for determining the building permittability of construction projects. So it's a theoretical approach. And as you can see here, I developed a system which means which elements or which describes which elements are needed to obtain a building permit. And the system contains of the product system, a target system, an actor system, and the action system, process system, you can say. And as we are focused on the process today, I will go much deeper in the process system right now. So what you have to know is this is a very general model, and I would like to show you in the next slides how I get the data to develop it. And we have also keep in mind that it is the building permit or the building permit authority perspective. So it's not the designer's perspective or something else, it's from the building authority side. Okay, so as you may all know, the building permit process is very bad documented, at least in Germany. So I needed to conduct data or to gain data by myself within an empirical study. And I conducted qualitative expert interviews with building permit authorities, but also with designers and architects, project managers, and also lawyers, for example, to get a really big picture what the building permit process means. So what I want to show you here is that I conducted the building permit authorities and asked them, how is your process? In very detail, we asked everything. And I did it with several ones. And here's one example. I will just show you. This is the second one. At the end, I got like 12 process slides like this for each authority, and each authority is different from each other. So I would like to show you these two examples. So the first one is, as you can see here, so we have the building permit authority, and one building official, it's just one person, is responsible for everything.
Judith.
Yeah.
I have trouble seeing anything on my screen.
Okay.
Is it only my problem, or do you others see your presentation?
I do see the presentation.
Yes, see it?
Yes, me
Fine.
too.
Okay.
Me too.
Please go back to full screen.
Can you see it now? Okay, so can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. So what you're seeing here is that one building official is responsible for each step, for the pre-check, request documents in case, and review the planning law, review building law, participate other involved agencies, and also making the decision at the end, issuing the notification letter, and send the final permit to the applicant. And this is one example. And the second one, as you see here, the building permit authority consists of a few more members. So we have a reception, for example, here, and a team leader, the head of the department, who is involved, and the building official. And so here, for example, the building permit or the building application receives at the reception. They doing all the completeness check, the pre-check, like called in the other one, do the registration of the project, and also request the applicant for other documents, and they also assign the building application to a specific building official, and then the building official is doing all the checking, the content checking, and also the participation part. He's provided a decision, but at the end, the head of the department check the notification again, and also it's stamped and signed. So just to get an idea how different the processes can be, as Antaro said, I think it's probably always the same. So what I did in my dissertation is that I used all the 12 process maps and generalized and formalized it to a general model. So as you can see here, I separated the process in different levels. So like the main process are the formal review, the assignment, the participation, the content review, and the issuance of the notification letter. Then we have a level 2 I called content, and we have also a conformity check or conformity levels. So and I tried to involve some some specific option or action alternatives, you can say. For example, the assignment, which means who building official get the respective building application. Is it assigned chronologically, territorially? I'm sorry. Or is it based on the content of the project? So something like that. So this is just a general schema, but and I developed some detailed sub-processes out of this schema. So let's go back. So I mean, for example, here this completeness check. No, this is the formal review. Sorry. You can see here these 3 processes: the confirmation of receipt, the registry, and the completeness check. And this is what I did then a little bit more detailed. And which you can see here, just an example is this one, the conformity check. So which means that every paragraph or article, depending on the regulation, is checked step by step or paragraph by paragraph. So you have, so actually you are doing, or the building official doing this like for each paragraph. So for example, in Germany, you can apply for a deviation. So the first question would be, for example, does an application for deviation exist? And yes or no. So you have your decision and your gateways, how to proceed. So because I think it was very important to map this, but from out of the interviews, it was very important to understand that a lot of implicit knowledge exists there, and very often the building officials were not aware of that they're really making a decision, or which instruments to make a decision they really have. So, and this is what I did in my PhD thesis, to try to map everything. So to make a decision model, to get them aware they doing a decision, for example. So for my validating part of my dissertation, I transferred the theory, what you saw before, into practice. And I developed a web application prototype, which guides the building official through the building permit process. So as you saw before, here are all the processes. The 5 ones you recognize. So these are the main processes. which are subdivided in the other ones, like the formal review we already saw, the confirmation of receipt, registry, and checking completeness of documents and everything. So we have a text field for documentation, and we have also here a data collection where we also, I put a building information model in as a sample to involve the BIM model here. So if you are more interested in this thesis, I just published the English translation like 2 weeks before, and I shared also the link on Slack, so feel free to read and write me if you have any questions about it or something. So the next part, what I want to show you is the part of the GeoBIM project. So I had the pleasure to had a research day abroad in Italy last year at Fraunhofer Italia. So I visited Chada there. It was really great. And we, the GeoBIM project, Fraunhofer Italia investigates in the GeoBIM project the connection of BIM and GIS in the South Tyrolean context, in building permitting for sure. And we have a little small part of it to, we had 2 aims to do it. The first one was testing and validating the process-based and BIM-oriented web application prototype I introduced you just before in the South Tyrolean context now. And the second aim was to analyze and compare the as-is building permit process in South Tyrol. So how we did that? So we used my web application prototype, and therefore we had to what we call technical approach. In the first step, we had to adjust the regulations in the South Tyrolean manner, and the second step was also an empirical study we did there. So we went to a municipality and conducted interviews there. So we also wanted to promote BIM using, let's say, to them, because all the interviewees had no expertise in BIM so far. So we wanted to show them, please imagine you can use this web application in combination with a BIM model for a specific or sample process project. Please tell us what do you think, and we also guided them to the checking process. And as we are talking about process today, we also mapped how we did this in detail. So you can see in the light gray, they can use the BIM model, and in the dark gray, the web application, and the white ones are just by their own. So so they imagined, or I said to them, so please imagine you have to check the distances, for example, and let's do this with this BIM model for your support. So first of all, they access the BIM model, which was linked to the application. They can filtering the objects needed, or the objectives for the certain regulation that's also implemented in the web application. That's what I meant with the technical approach. So they can also view some specific. I'm sorry, I just recognized I did a mistake, because the dark ones are actually the BIM model, and the other one, and the light gray ones are the web application. I am sorry for that. So as I said, so you can use this web application for some specific information. So, for example, the checkability in the model, but also they can later on check the law text again for the specific paragraph, and also the objective of the specific law. And of course, they can, after the checkability in the model, they can measure the distances, and this I think you know what I want to say. So they can use both, and after that we ask them, was it sufficient or not? And they were very enthusiastic about this. Even they had no experiences, and they were also not feared. So it was like a very good result. Right now, we're still working on the analyzing and comparing part from the SS building permit process, and I just want to show you some examples. So as you recognize, this is the same map of the process, or I introduced before the schematic one. And for example, we recognize they also automated the confirmation of receipt and the registry in South Tyrol. And depending on the assignment, who building official get a application, so they doing it authorized. So one of them, the supervisor, say you can do it, and they also do it substantive, which means they decide on the specific or the respective building official has not that much experience, so this building official get a smaller project, for example. And due to the local manner in South Tyrol, they did not participate in municipality, because the building permit authority is the municipality. So, but they of course they have to participate some other agencies to be involved. This TÖB is a German expression. It means Träger öffentlicher Belange, which means other agencies to be involved, or public agencies, if you want. And what we also recognized is that I divided in Germany the content review in planning and building law, which is also possibly in the US, for example, which I show you later, but it's not possible in South Tyrol, because so far I would say that it's not that planning and building law like that I know from Germany. It's more the urbanistic and building law on the one side, and on the other side it's more the aesthetic basis or decision where they. So I have to find now a way how I can map it. So I'm still in progress this topic. Okay, so next is the collaboration from my side and the University of Southern California, specifically Professor Lucio Säubelmann. We just submitted this paper, and it's still under peer review right now. So we wrote about lessons learned from a comparative study between Germany and the United States regarding the SS building permit processes, and it's not about digitalization. It's really about learning from the building permit processes right now. Where are the differences, the similarities, and what can we learn of it? So I also mapped these processes there, which is a little bit more complicated. And I also, just an example, is for this hearing. It relates to or belongs to the planning content check, where the entire public is involved to get to express their opinion and everything. So this is also what we did in this study. And I would like to give just one example from the lessons learned. And the example is the participation either by applicant or by the plan checker. So the applicant is the building owner or the client, and the plan checker is the building authority. So, and this table is referred to the Doing Business report. You probably all know. So this shows that the US needs process steps, 17 process steps in just 68 days to get a building permit. In Germany, there are less process steps, but like double much time. I'm not sure it's right, to get a building permit. So, and Doing Business conducted this data to build, to investigate how long does it take, or for example, to build a simple warehouse in specific or respective countries. So, and this is the applicant's point of view. And this also, the process steps includes like every step, starting from preparing the building permit until the permit is really issued. So if we emphasize that first of all, in the US, the applicant have to participate, the other involved agencies, and in Germany, the plan checker or the building authority is doing this. So if we emphasize now that to the process steps, to the high number of process steps includes the participation in the building business, Doing Business report, and which means they are much faster to participate the other involved agencies as they are participated in the by the authority. So, which means this saves the participation per applicant, saves time for the authority. And for example, if the other involved agencies reject the application completely, for example, they do not even affect the building authority at all. And on the other hand, it's not that, let's say, citizen friendly. It's more citizen friendly to do it by the plan checker, but otherwise they have to have a lot of organizational effort if they participating the other involved agencies. So this is just an example. So we compared also with existing data, what we can learn from it. So the next slide is about the new project I am involved. Since January, I am working for IB software within the research project IECO. IECO stands for Intelligent Empowerment of Construction Industry. So it started officially in December last year and has a duration of 3 years. It's funded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. And the consortium has 11 partners throughout the AEC sector. And also we have a lot of some scientific institutions involved, some universities, but also big planning office. So and RIB is the lead partner of this consortium. And the overall goal of this project is to develop a Gaia-X-based data space for the construction industry that looks at the entire building life cycle. So as we all know, the building permit process is just a little part of it, but we are very interested to investigate it. So our vision for the building permit processes within this IECO project, and are just our vision because we just started, we have no results yet, unfortunately, but I will keep you updated for sure. So it's to conceptualize and develop a standardized process, and we want to develop a right and rule system within the Gaia-X services, but also therefore we have to analyze the current as well digital and non-digital state of processes from different perspectives, as from the authority point of view, but also from some agency involved view and also from the planning office view, for example. We want also to analyze the requirements needed for the Gaia-X services, as well as to investigate the interfaces from the building permit process or the building permit authority to, for example, the structural engineering office. We have also some IA specialists in our consortium, so I would really like to develop some AI solutions about this. And at the end, so we are aiming to have a proof of concept for the selected use cases we also have to fix. And last but not least, as I invited you in some previous meetings before, we have started our process paper. And right now we had a little introduction from each country. We have Germany, Turkey, Italy, Portugal, and Spain right now in our co-authorship. And right now we are investigating the processes there, and we have to look on the methodology next time. So, which means how many interviews or we want to conduct and everything. So what I want to say is we are still open for contributions. So even if you do not want to co-author the paper, we would very pleased to maybe to investigate your respective building permit process in your country. Okay, so thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please let me know right now, or you can also email me. I'm really pleased to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Please ask your questions. Don't be shy. Anyone who wants to start?
Judith, I have a question.
Yeah.
In the very beginning about your PhD thesis, you mentioned that you kind of had a look at 12 different municipalities and like created the process maps. 12 municipalities all from one state, or like from different states all over Germany, or was it like focus on Thuringia?
Oh no, it's all over Germany. And it was actually there were a little bit more actually, but I wasn't able to get the process map out of all interviews. So, but it was all over Germany. So, but if you would like to have a very specific number from how many interviews from each state, so I can give it to you. I think you can also read it in my dissertation.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Judith? I can read in the chat. There was one more question for Antero by Dogus. Dogus, would you like to talk yourself? So it's about the previous presentation. Is Dogus still here? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. I think Antero answered my question in the chat.
Yes, and
yeah, thank you.
As I put in the chat, so there will be a project starting right now to answering more specifically to these issues that you ask for. That what are the entities and properties IFC that the data should have, and that project focuses on those. So it would be nice to share info about the results and the project later on. So that's a possible idea for further presentations, and I could ask for the project manager to be present and then share more about it. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the question, and if I can continue directly to Judith, I would have a question to you, that since you had the collaboration between two municipalities in different countries, so about their collaboration and the national level collaborations, is that anyhow in the focus of your project?
Do you mean the paper, the process paper at the end, or in general, because I investigated in different countries the processes?
Yeah, I meant in the sense of all Europe level collaboration and creating these regulations in collaboration with different nations. So in that sense.
Yeah, I see. So for the paper part, so we are still thinking about how many countries we need to involve, because it's as you know, to interview and investigate the processes is very difficult and time consuming. So I'm not sure if we are able to involve every European country, for example, but I think it's very, very interesting and important. And as I recognize, because I did this investigations in different countries, so to find out which is similar and different is very, it's very important, because usually, well, at least for me, we in Germany, we live here in our small space, and actually we think it's always everywhere the same, but it isn't. So actually it's very important, and I think it's maybe we have the opportunity in our network here to show and investigate more where the differences and similarities between the processes. And yeah, that's why we want to write this paper. So Antero, if you would like to join, please feel free.
Thank you. With pleasure.
Great.
Thank you. Yes. Anyone else was speaking? No. So thank you, everyone. If there are no more questions for Judith, thank you very much, Judith, for the interesting work you presented and very complete and detailed job you did. Maybe you can share also the link to your thesis again here in the chat so that everyone can access it and read that. And the final presentation for today, Nicholas Nisbet, please go ahead. I have to allow you to present. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, please, the stage is yours.
Okay, so I'd like just to add some footnotes, some comments on what Judith has presented, because I think her work is very important. But the question that I think it comes back to is, why are we trying to check models at all? Obviously, my background is an architect and developing BIM over 40 years, and it's very easy to see it as a self-contained problem. We have models, we want to check them. Can we get results? But the first point I'd like to make is that as with many things in life, no one actually wants the checking. They want the outcome from the checking. They want buildings. And in particular, no one wants model-based checking. They want good buildings. And what that means in different countries and how it's achieved in the processes, which is what Judith has started to look at, is really important, that we put whatever systems or ideas we deploy, we need to put it into the context of the legal, the regulatory, and the political context of different countries, and make sure that we don't take a technology bias and say, because we know how to check something or other, that is what should be checked, or that what we don't know how to check yet isn't an important or valid check. So those are the kinds of things that I've been starting to think about as part of my PhD journey, which still has many years to run. So I'd like to just share a few thoughts on this. I copied Elena's bar chart from earlier, but unfortunately it's not enough detail to read the Hungarian. But I think, first of all, the checking that we're talking about is usually regulations. But they're only one part of a whole range of things that clients are interested in. And I use the word norms to be a collective term for regulations, client requirements, and there's a third category of recommendations that come from product manufacturers, that come from insurance companies, that come from environmental schemes, all of which are trying to influence what kinds of buildings we create. And so when it comes to compliance checking, we've got a spectrum. I think it's very easy in these kinds of forums to think either it's manual checking or fully automated checking, but actually it's a spectrum, a rainbow, starting with self-checking and self-correction. That again, no one wants the checking process. They would rather that things were got right in the first place. And we should think about how whatever resources we produce or whatever tools we produce, how is that going to improve the design process so that the regulatory process can be entered confidently. And that's very important because the regulatory process, as we saw with the World Bank study, it adds a large, a portion of a year, a third of a year to a project when there is uncertainty and there is the risk of change. And it's a major barrier to many investments to say, well, if we don't know it's got it right, then in 3 months' time, will we have a design that was worth the trouble? So I think we need to make sure that whatever we think about can be applied before checking. It was one of the features of the original Singapore e-plan check system, was that applicants could test their models anytime without risk, without fear. And it was only when they wanted the formal certification that they paid the fee and entered into a formal process. The second thing is that there is usually a stage which of visual review, just looking at the scheme and guessing whether it is complete and whether it's going to pass or not. And this is heuristics. This is people just minimizing their own workload very often. It was explained to me once that a building control officer will look at the name of the designer first, because that will tell them what mistakes they're likely to have made and so on. So one of the features of the manual system is that all the way through, the participants know how the system works. know what mistakes people are likely to have made, but it can fail catastrophically. In the US, the Autocodes project asked 8 different jurisdictions to assess a design for a supermarket superstore, and none of them spotted that the fire exits didn't go anywhere. The other thing about manual checking that I'd just like to mention is that it's not pass or fail, or pass or true or false. There's always a third state, which is undecided. And one of the things that the manual process does is try to do a completeness check before doing the checking. And if we do achieve automated checking, that becomes redundant because the specification for what information should be provided is enough information to pass. And if it's automated or even assisted, then the completion check is usually, sorry, the completeness check is usually insufficient, or it's overburdensome. The example I'd give is that when people talk about information completeness, they'll end up talking about doors and saying the strength of the automatic closure mechanism on a door should be recorded. Now that certainly in the UK is nonsense, because only the entrance doors are expected to have automatic opening closing mechanisms. And even then you don't have to, if there's a reason of security to say that you're not going to provide them. Now, the pre-checking, the completeness checking, very often comes up with nonsense like every door should have the automatic closure strength in newtons, in pressure, and so on. Whereas actually, it's the regulations that define what information is required, and that's flexible, dynamic. It can change with building type. It can change with versions of the regulation. It can change with alternative ways of complying. And in many cases, it's only a handful of objects that need a lot of information on them, and so there's a question mark there. Just going on to what I would call assisted checking, which is what most designers and what most building controllers are really interested in. They believe that they have the final word, that there is no machine equivalent to what they do, and in some cases they don't want there to be. But there is a middle solution which is very common in checking regimes, which is just checklists. A sorted or organized list of the interpretation of the regulations, which can be followed through to get a decision. And sometimes those checklists are filed and kept. Sometimes there is just a summary sheet saying, yes, I've done all this checking and so on. But where the information that goes into those checklists come from, it might be from BIM, it might be from a GIS system, it might be from manual inspection of the drawings, or it might be from asking the applicant questions. And all of those things can be supported using information technology without calling it automated checking or automatic checking, so on. So there's a whole spectrum of things there, and it's true that in some countries the end result of the checking process is that someone has to either sign or put a seal, a mark on a set of drawings. And if we only think in terms of manual checking or automated checking, that becomes very difficult. I think the Korean program has come up with an interesting solution, which is that the IFC model, the BIM model, is checked automatically, but the drawings are then generated from that IFC model by the regulatory authority so that they can stamp them. And that circumvented the need to go back to the Korean Parliament and say, we need a new Building Control Act and so on. So I think with, if we think of the solutions as being on this spectrum, there's a lot of flexibility in how we can address these bureaucratic or these formal requirements. So that brings me to just making a few remarks about compliance checking and problems. And I think these discussions we've been having have a tendency to focus on the technical solution, and I'm working on technical solutions. But it's important to see it as a management problem. Can it be fast? Can it be accurate? And most importantly, can it be acceptable? If the fastness is about how long does it take the applicants to prepare the information, as well as how fast can it be checked. The accuracy is about, well, is closely related to the acceptability. That if a client is investing millions of euros, millions of dollars into a building project or planning to, then the connection between the regulations and the outcome must be very, very tight, because otherwise it will be open to appeal or legal challenge or applications for deviation, which will actually make the situation worse. So we need to think really hard about the connection between the regulations and the mechanisms we're using for checking it. And it may be that some algorithms are approximate or are visually very appealing, but may not actually give an answer which is acceptable, is understandable to the participants. And then we have a technical problem, and both the speakers have talked about the percentage of regulations that are technically checkable. And I think we have to be really careful that we don't define automatic code compliance as what a particular product can do, or what a particular information model like IFC can do or does do. We need to separate the idea that there are regulations that need to be checked, and then think about how they are checked, and whether IFC is the right answer, or whether an application form is the right answer, or whether a well, other sources of information are the thing that's going to be checked. But we mustn't stop trying to make regulations checkable just because a particular technology doesn't currently support it. We need to look at saying, and I'll say more about that in a moment. I think the other big challenge, and I said that many building control officers want to have the final say, and to be honest, many architects and designers sell their ability to get past or get through the regulatory process as part of their selling of themselves. And so we've got to be careful that we identify where it's a technical problem and where it's a sociology problem, a power game problem, that if there is a body of people who say we must have human supervision of these decisions, we need to examine why. Is it that the automatic systems don't produce enough evidence to convince anyone, or is it that the participants are exploiting the uncertainties in the system in order to win the points that they want to win? And that brings me to something which I know will be different in every country, but the question of evidence. Whether we submit drawings or BIM models, or even retrospectively just say, well, I built it, is it legal or not? We need to think carefully about what counts as evidence. If we only take the geometry as evidence from a BIM, then we're ruling out all the information that's held in the alphanumeric properties, the specification documents, etc., etc. If we only say that it's got to be geometric or numerical, then we're missing out the fact that that the submission is a claim, and there needs to be, or there may need to be, a dialogue between the applicant and the checker to say what counts as evidence to say that this is true. In the worst case scenario, and it's true for drawings and for BIM models, you can get properties that disagree with the geometry. You can lie. Now, it's tempting to say, well, geometry will have priority over properties or whatever. But that's only the first stage of a whole cycle of evidence and claim and counterclaim. If I put a U value on a window, a heat transfer value, then the building inspector can say, I don't believe that. Where did you get that number from? I can then point to a manufacturer's product data sheet, for example, and the inspector can still say, I don't believe that. Where's the third-party assessment for that property? And so on. So we need to think about evidence in a much more deeper way than just saying, well, we'll test the BIM model as it stands. Because that's the, in many cases, it's not a technical measurement that's in dispute. It's about whether the values being used are the appropriate ones. But the really big challenge, I think, is the connection to the real world. What is it about this checking process that then connects to the real world? And it's interesting that in the UK, we still have building inspectors who go to site. My understanding is that in Germany, they don't. But one of the functions, certainly in the UK, of the checking the compliance process is to turn a set of performance requirements, the energy consumption to be less than this, the strength of the floors to be more than that, into dimensions and materials that can be checked on site. No inspector on the building site is going to jump up and down on the floor to see if it's strong enough. Well, no sensible one will. What they'll be looking for is to say, is the floor made of the materials that were promised, and is it of the dimensions that were promised, and so on. And of course, in other countries, it may be a different mechanism. It may be insurers, or it may be prospective buyers who will ask those questions to say, is the building actually, was it built as was claimed in the application? And therefore, can I safely occupy it or buy it, or so on? So I think there are a lot of really good technical solutions coming through, but we need to make sure that we wrap them in a realistic understanding of what the ecosystem, what the context is into which they need to fit.
Excuse me, sorry, Nick, sorry to interrupt you. We have 15 minutes left for our meeting, so if you are able to conclude your presentations in the next 4 or 5 minutes, so we can still discuss.
Of course, yes. Okay.
Sure.
Some of you will have
Thank
seen
you.
this
Sorry.
diagram before, but the work I'm doing is trying to look at normative documents, whether they are regulations or client requirements or other things in blue. Also to look at the descriptive documents, which might be drawings, might be BIM models, might be narrative text, and make sure that we treat them equally, and get them into a form where they can be compared against each other. And in some cases, you will find in normative documents descriptive things. You might find the remark in a question about fire alarms. Alarm can be raised by mechanical or human systems, or some such remark. Now that's descriptive. What it's doing in a normative document, we can discuss, but the content breaks down into normative content, descriptive content, and in the middle, dictionary content. And the dictionary content is the way we join the language of regulations to the language of our building descriptions. And it might be mapping UK approved documents to IFC. It might be mapping German energy regulations to a GBXML model or whatever. But the point that I guess I want to finish on is that each of those three aspects needs to be supported by evidence. That questioning of saying, why is that true? Where did that come from? How did you get that result? And is that acceptable? And just an example of where that thinking is leading, here is a standard regulation. It's from Australia about building heights and setbacks. And using the RAISE methodology, we can turn that into an automatic checklist. And I don't care whether it's filled in by a BIM or a GIS system, or if it's filled in by an applicant, or if it's filled in by an inspector. By filling in the white boxes, we can answer whether the particular building proposal we're looking at is acceptable. And so it's not a case of manual checking or automated code compliance. We can help the industry move into a more systematic approach. The nice thing about this form is that as you answer the questions, each clause disappears down to a pass or a fail. It just says you have passed 3C9, you have passed 3C11, and so we can bridge the gap between current manual processes and fully automated code compliance. That's all I wanted to say today. Sorry for rushing the last part.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions for Nick? Maybe one quick question. Maybe we can also keep it for the chat or for Slack. So we can end here the topic part of this EUnet4DBP meeting. Thank you to all the presenters for the very nice and interesting presentations.